Okay, hi Facebook. Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Open Source Live. We're opening the source, keeping it live, keeping it alive and live. I'm going to share this in my Facebook group, which is, I'll try and share the link below after I'm done this actually. But you're welcome to join. I have not been posting a whole lot, so you're not going to really get bombarded, but it is called The Guided Ones. It is a free community. Welcome, loves. I always like to say labs. Welcome, labs. Okay, first I have to show you the mug that I have, which is so great. I don't know if you can read it, but it says F-bomb mom. That is definitely me. I sprinkle that like confetti. It's kind of funny. I'm not actually swearing, but that was a gift from my hubby. And I was like, you get me. He gets me. He gets me. I am definitely an F-bomb mom. So shout out to all my other F-bomb moms out there. Okay. Unhooking yourself. Let's just get right down into it. Unhooking yourself. There's so many, so when I sat down to write this, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that I want to say to this. And so I'm going to do my best to I say this every time. I'm going to do my best to make it short, sweet, and to the point, but also unhooking yourselves is, it's a lifelong journey. It's maybe lifetimes, right? It's like peeling away all that which has never been, was never meant for you to carry and hold in this lifetime. And yet here we are. So just to preface this, a lot of the work that I do, I would say the majority, if not like 99% of the work that I do with clients is in this lived experience. In other words, we're not necessarily sourcing, your timeline before you arrived here in this iteration of who you are. So it's in this lived experience. I find that when we can really ground into this iteration of who we are in this lifetime, this time we chose to be here, and we can really ground in and heal from this place, all that came before us as well becomes part of that healing. It's really like ancestral healing, generational healing happens in this lived present lifetime, right? Sure, there's lots of timeline work that we can do, but the unhooking yourself, the unplugging yourself, if you will, from whatever you call it, the matrix, the illusion, whatever it is that you call it, the things I have to be, what I think I have to live up to, when you can neutralize the charge that keeps you locked into that, in this lived experience now, that's really what frees you. It keeps saying slow connection, but I'm just going to keep going. I do this every time. I don't know why. I'm like, we have pretty good internet here. Okay, so last week we talked about the void, the standstill, the place at which everything and nothing all at once, the place where it may feel very confusing, where you're not really sure what's coming next, even where you're coming from. And just to kind of share a tiny little bit, 30 seconds about that, one of the big takeaways I was really hoping for you to get is that we're really focusing on the gap or the relationship, if you will, between what it is that you want, and that can be anything. There's no rules around what it can be. What is it that you want, and who do you believe you are in relationship to that desire? And when they feel at odds with each other, when it feels like a battle or a fight, like I can't have what I want because I'm not that person yet, that's where things reveal in terms of the constellation, or the parts that are at battle within you, the voices in your head, the feelings you have, the sensations, the thoughts, the beliefs. There's usually a constellation of about, I would say 2 to 4 parts that everybody has that are those sticky ones. When you can work with those directly, then things become more spacious, easier, more in the flow, a little bit more creative permission, if you will. Okay? So I talked about that last week. So if you haven't seen that, feel free to go ahead, skip through, watch it. But today I want to talk about disentangling you from that which keeps you seemingly in the illusion or locked in terms of who you believe you are, how you can operate in this world, the rules that you have to follow or not follow, right? Hey, Anastasia. And sort of this idea of unburdening your system, right? Which goes on the idea that we all have we all have healing to do, even if we've been on this journey for lifetimes, right? There's always something to, it's like a garden, right? It's like you're an organic, moving, mobile, mercurial system. And there's always going to be things to clear, right? We don't just go to the dentist once and we're like, yeah, I'm set for life. It's like, no, this is an ongoing piece, right? And so your own healing, your own unfolding, if you will, your own coming into the truth of who you are is an ongoing piece, right? So I want to speak directly into, there's three big different ways that I guide clients through this. I'm just going to name them really quick, and then I'm going to dive into the one that I feel like is most appropriate. So we can we can unhook you, we can free you from all the protection mechanisms that you have in place. And we all have them, and that's where I'm going to do the deep dive in a little bit. But the main piece is that we can kind of go from the mind down, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. The mind is a very powerful piece. Yes. The mind is a very powerful piece. So we can use some NLP work, neuro-linguistic programming, which works on language as an energy, as a power, language as the piece that can really shift you somatically in your body. Anything around somatics, it's all about the body, right? Somebody asked a question the other day, like, I heard that there was like yoga for somatic healing. And I was like, girl, yoga, that's what it is. It is that, right? So anyways, a little side note there. So we can go with NLP, which again works with like the power of language, and that does, to me, that has a lot of grounding, but it's also got limitations. But the one piece that I do really appreciate from the NLP training I got is this idea that we can bridge our beliefs. In other words, we can train and work the mind statement by statement, and knowing that each statement carries an energetic pull, an energetic frequency in our body. And we can train our body step by step to get to the most open, sorry, my husband just walked in the door. The most aligned frequency through the NLP by slowly bridging ourselves. So that process is called bridging your beliefs. And you start with the most stuck piece. You start with the most like I feel like I'm caged in. I'm locked in my own fear. And then you slowly move to open that up, so that fear is no longer a statement of fear, but a reclamation of actually who I really am deep down inside. So it's an I am statement that you end with. And the I am is the piece that is the reclamation of my truth. I am actually a powerful person simply because I am, right? I am valuable because I am in and of itself. So belief bridging is very powerful. Again, it's got limitations. It's got, unless you're really in your body with it, it's not necessarily going to like hit all the places, right? So we want to like bring more into it. The other piece about unhooking is there's two different ways that I work, predominantly two different ways. So the NLP is like, just to give you an idea of like, you can work with your mind, but the two approaches I take are, interestingly enough, extremely different, and I'm curious which one vibes with you. So there's a very slow and steady, reliable, dependable, multi-approach, multi-use work on parts work. And a lot of that is based on IFS. I won't get into it. All you need to know is that it's a slow but steady but reliable system. And it works on the idea that to unhook yourself, to unfold yourself, to give yourself more spaciousness, to truly release some, right? We're still going to have fear in our body, accept it. That is what it is, right? We can do all the work. You're still going to have a piece of fear in your body because that's what also keeps you alive. We should be afraid of fire because it can burn you and kill you, right? We should be afraid of heights because we can fall and die, right? So there's like, fear is helpful, right? But the majority of the fear that we have, the majority of the places that we want to unfold and unhook from, we don't need, right? And so the system of parts work works slow and steady. And it's like, imagine that you have a gate or you have guards, your protectors, and they are guarding your most precious material inside of you, which is the parts of you. They're often young. We might call them your inner children, your inner child. Your inner child, you don't just have one. You have many of them. You had many lived experiences in this lifetime that you remember, and they may be painful memories. They may be traumatic memories, lowercase t, capital T, traumatic memories, right? And so your gatekeepers, if you will, your protectors are the ones that are guarding anybody or anything getting close to that. So when I say we want to unhook ourselves, what I'm really saying is we want to unhook the protective mechanisms that we have that keep us from reaching the deep parts of us. Some of us are afraid to open that because it's like Pandora's box. I don't want to go there. It's over. I'm afraid of my own fear, right? That's a big one, which I'm going to dive into. The idea that you actually have parts that protect you because they're afraid of the fear too, right? And so the slow and steady, it's like very consensual, permission-based healing where we don't go there until we actually have authentic access. The other approach on the opposite end of the spectrum is one that is fast, just as reliable, okay? But it's fast, it's discombobulating a little bit, right? Like I have clients that like see stars or feel like they want to vomit or like have to run to the bathroom or like they belch a lot. These are all good. It's just that it's moving energy very quick, right? It's like ripping off the Band-Aid as opposed to going, okay, a little bit more, a little bit more. Is this okay? Is this okay? Both approaches are very important, but to unhook yourself, it doesn't matter which door you go through, as long as you're moving toward a door, as long as you're opening a door. And even if you're not, what if you could just make that okay? I'm not ready to unhook myself. I'm not ready to take away the illusion. I'm not ready to face my fears. I'm not ready to release that. Because there's a reason why your body holds on to things. Does it need to? Is it healthy over time? Not necessarily. But what if it's okay to just be in the freeze response? Or what if it's okay to be in a flight response? What if all of that is okay for the time that you need to be there, right? And so there's a rule that you can break that if I'm feeling down or I'm not totally 100% or I'm not perfect in my own mental health or my own spiritual wellness or my own physical health, that I have to fix it right away. Right? So like, could we break that rule? Like one of the things that I often say in sessions is like, are you willing to see it differently? So we can, our own mind, right, in our own stories, in our own timeline can be stuck like, nope, it's got to be this way, or like, I'm not comfortable with any other way, like this is how it is. And the healthiest mindset, and again, there's no judgment on like, if you're not there or what have you, because I'm not always there, but one of the healthiest mindsets is, am I willing to see this differently? Could this be different? Could I be different in this? Could the story be different? Like, am I willing to see it differently? So when I say unhooking, the baseline of this is really releasing the protective mechanisms that keep us safe, or the illusion of safety. The illusion of safety. Hey, Teddy Lynn. Am I willing to release the protective mechanisms, the ways that I protect myself? Am I willing to kind of like unhook or release from the stories of those? And here's the thing. We're all going to need a sense of protection. Hey girl, hey. Hey girl, hey. We're all going to need a sense of protection. We're all going to need to feel safe. This is a natural, and I want to normalize that this is something that everybody is deserving of. Not only are you deserving of it, but everybody needs a sense of safety in order to step forward, in order to move through. Could you imagine being on a plane and somebody's like, here's your parachute. I think it works. We haven't really tested it. I'm not 100% sure, but it's probably fine. Our nervous system does not respond to, it's probably okay. Our nervous system needs a baseline of okay. So before you go and unhook yourself from the illusion, before you like unplug yourself from this proverbial matrix, there has to be some sense of safety in your body. So this is where breath works help. This is where tapping helps. Before you do any of the bigger work, you need to make sure that there's a level of permission or consent in your body, in your nervous system, to actually do that work. And it's dangerous if you don't. So even though I mentioned I do that sort of more of like that quantum healing where it's fast and it's rapid and it's a little discombobulating, but there you are free of your own protective devices because you spoke your truth, you got honest, right? If there isn't a baseline of safety, you better believe that there's going to be pushback. People talk a lot about like doing this, deep work, and then they get sick later. And it's like, and they're like, yeah, that's my body releasing toxins. Okay, so that can be true. Probably is true. I've experienced it. There's truth in that. There's also truth in the fact that in your process of desiring to unhook yourself or unfold yourself or release yourself from this fear or whatever's in your body that no longer belongs there or no longer do you want it there, is it healthy? In that process, you have discombobulated and there's going to be a pushback within you, right? Some of remember I mentioned you all have parts that are there to protect you. They will push back. And for some of them, they're going to intensify. So yes, you may have gone through a period where you're like, yes, I spoke my truth, I released it. And then you are in bed, unable to function for 2 weeks. Because your protective, the parts of you that are there keeping vigilant watch are like, shit went sideways. I don't know what that was. Somebody came in and pulled the rug up from under us. And I wasn't ready for it. We weren't ready for it. And so we have to double down our efforts. So if you ever find that has happened to you, I just want to normalize it. It's okay. And it just means that next time there's more consent in your body to move forward with the process of releasing. Because it's a big deal. Like some of these things that we've been holding in ourselves have been there for generations, right? Yes. As I'm getting sick, this resonates right now. Yeah. So, okay, so let me just make sure that I don't miss my notes because I made notes, ladies. I made notes. Okay. I talked about when we sit there and we're like, okay, part of the unhooking is the undertone of it is really releasing those protective mechanisms, basically releasing any part of us that is operating from fear. Okay? And again, this isn't bad, right? Like I take my kids out to the bus and there's a little bit of operating from fear that I come from, but it's actually good because I'm like, hey girls, actually we don't step near the highway because we're on like a slight mini highway here. And I'm like, when we wait for the bus, we step back here. We wait by the mailbox, right? It's like, yeah, I'm operating from fear that my children could be, crushed, but that's a healthy fear. So determining is like, over time, is this healthy? Does this keep me alive? Or does this keep me safe in a story, right? So there's different types. So, but why would we have a fear of unhooking or releasing those protective mechanisms? We're human. We're going to be afraid that we've lost control. How does it feel to not have control, to be out of control? For most of us, that's very unsettling. And we're quickly going to get a manager or a protective mechanism that comes in and is like, get it together, girl. You can go this far, but not that far. You can be this loud, but not that loud. You can pull away, but not that much, right? So we're going to have a fear of not being in control. And if we're not in control, then, and if that happens, then, so I want you to understand that when there's a fear of releasing protective mechanisms, there's a whole series of events that your whole inner system is afraid is going to happen. If I'm not in control, it won't get done. If it doesn't get done, then X, Y, and Z. If I'm not in control, then I'm not in power. If I'm not in power, bad things can happen to me because I'm the only one that's there to watch and make sure and stay vigilant. In other words, you may have grown up in a situation where you just had to do everything on your own. Nobody was really there to help you. Nobody was there to ask, do you need any help? Nobody was there to really walk you through those tough moments. So you learn that actually in order for me to stay safe in the world, it's all up to me. I have to do it. And if I don't do it, it doesn't get done. And if it doesn't get done, I could get hurt. I could get kicked out of the group. I could not belong. In other words, I'm not going to be safe. So to be asked to release that controlling part of you, that's a really big unhook. I mean, that's a huge unhook. That is challenging your safety. Yeah, controlling will keep you safe. And in some cases, it's true. It will keep you safe. You do need to have control of a situation. So I don't want to say that some of these behaviors that we've taken on over time are unhealthy, because at the time they were our only choice. Often when we're younger, we don't have as much choice. We're smaller, we have less power, we have less say, we have less control, right? So then what happens? That inner teenager, the one that's like full of rage, full of like all the energy, sometimes called like the emotional Sherpa, the one who has to maintain and manage all the emotions that everything in your system feels, she's going to be intense, or he, or it, or they, doesn't matter. That part of you is going to be intense. It has to hold all the emotions, all the intensities that you've practiced burying or hiding or masking, or somehow like slowly letting a little bit of it out. So when we're talking about unhooking and releasing your protective mechanisms, your inner teenager is going to kick and scream. They are going to lay down the law. They are going to push back. Because if they don't have control over your emotional expression, then that's dangerous. That's really dangerous. Okay, so you're going to want to not unhook because it's going to threaten your system. Because then I won't be in control. And if I'm not in control, I'm not safe. And if I'm not safe, I could die. And if I die, then that's it. We're consistently battling with our own mortality. We are consistently battling with our own mortality. Period. Okay. One of the other reasons why it's a challenge to unhook is because this idea that people will come after me. So let's say that you are in the process of like working with your voice. In other words, like speaking your truth, sharing your story, outing some of the aspects of your lived experience, right? A good example, because I was having this conversation, because I want to start sharing a little bit more about my own mental health journey, if you will, and some of the struggles and some of the wins, right? But there's a part in me that's really monitoring the when, the how, and the where of when I share my own mental health over the years. There's a real strong part of me that's like, ooh, if we're going to do this, we have to get it right. Because if we don't get it right, we're going to lose our status as some expert in emotional mastery, which is a huge part of my, created identity online. It's like, oh, I'm here to teach you emotional mastery. So who am I if I'm having a struggle with my own mental health, right? And so there's this unhooking will challenge your own perceived identity and what you get out of it. Because if I'm not that way, then who am I? And then we're left with too many questions. So there's going to be parts of you that are going to push back on any unhooking, and they have valid reason. So we do not want to be kicking these guys to the curb, these parts that are protecting us. Our job is to get to understand, what are you here to do for me? And listen from the place of your highest self, if you will, your self energy, which holds curiosity. It holds a level of calm. You're not jiggled too much because fear comes up. You can actually hold space and witness the part of you that is afraid. And listen without judgment, without trying to control it, without puppeteering it. You'd be surprised how fast in session these parts that want to manipulate and control and organize the whole thing will come in. Because I'll be like, okay, so we're sitting with like a very intense part that's like holding the exiled fear of like when I got physically hurt or harmed, right? And I'll be like, what does that part need us to know? And some clients have told me in the past, I'm doing this very general speak, right? This isn't any one client's experience. I'm not comfortable doing that, but generally, sometimes they're like, oh, the part needs me to know that I'm okay and everything's going to be okay. And I'm like, you see how fast the protection came in? You see how fast that protective part came in? Oh no, don't go there. Don't get that most deeply vulnerable and hurt part to speak. Because that speaking holds way too much emotional intensity, way too much energy. We're going to be flooded and we're going to pass out. We're going to be overwhelmed. We're going to be, and then in a deep way, it's like, I'm going to fall into a deep, dark hole and I'll never get out. So you see how fast that protection comes in and speaks for it. So one of the best things you can do for yourself when you're in the process of unhooking is to just tell yourself the truth. Just tell the truth, right? And that is harder to do than it is to say. But it is possible, right? Okay. So those are the reasons why. Now, there's one other thing I wanted to say, and Anastasia and Teddy Lynn, I appreciate you being here. And all the other lovelies that have popped on. The last thing I want to say is that unhooking yourself is often, like I said, it's a protection, right? Is this making sense? Anastasia said over controlling is coming from a space of fear. Yeah. Controlling keeps us safe. The illusion of safety. But it does, right? There's nothing wrong with wanting to be in somewhat of a control. I notice I like to be in control in the kitchen. My husband came in and he started like moving all the food around and where the pasta was and where our beans are. And I'm like, what is he? Get out of my kitchen. I'm like, this is my space. That's just a funny little side note there. But I want to just like really clarify that when you have the fear come up or when you have that like intensity of emotion come up, or anything that doesn't match your ability to be the version of you that can have what it is you deeply desire. So whatever feels like it's blocking you from having what you truly want or being who you're truly meant to be, we talk about having these blocks. Okay. So I would argue that they're not blocks. Rather, I want you to think of them as a constellation, right? A constellation working in relationship together. That's what a constellation is. A constellation of between 2 and 4 parts of myself that are protecting me so fiercely, they're making it very difficult to move forward. So rather than I have a block, because a block is like, then you're stuck with this problem solving. How do I remove the block? Isn't that the next question? Well, how do I get rid of it? Right? And so a block creates that illusionary story that now you have to problem solve it and figure it out on how to remove the block. How do I get to the root cause? How do I get to the root? Okay, so like your issues or your challenges or problems, as however you describe them, are not, it's not one root thing. I'm not going to just pull one thing out and like, oh, yay. It's like, oh, what's that word? It doesn't matter, but it's like the root system of a mushroom. I mean, it's like, what's the word I'm looking for? It starts with an M. Like, Katie, blah, 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 blah. That's what Claire does when she's reading and she doesn't know the word. She's like, blah, 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 blah. Fair. So there isn't this one thing. So rather than a block, I want you to think of it like a constellation of 2 to 4 parts of yourself. Yes, LOL is right. 2 to 4 parts of yourself, okay, that are just vigilantly holding on. And they're holding on to, often, a series of things. Number one, an experience that you had, and they don't want it to happen again. So this is like a real thing happened. Actually, the last time I did this, that scary thing happened. So I won't do that again, or anything related to that again. So there's parts that are going to hold you back because you did have a lived experience. It did happen. And they don't want it to happen again. Because what came out of that was absolute pain and a burden that you have to carry. And they don't want to add to, and they don't want you to have to take any more on. Okay? So they're like, I'm here to make sure that doesn't happen again. They're like a bouncer at a bar. Like anything remotely close to it, you're not getting let in. Okay? They can also be there to protect an idea. And as long as you believe this idea, you're going to be safe. For example, rules. As long as the idea that you have to follow the rules to be safe. Okay, so you'll have a part that's keeping that on track, keeping you on track with following the rules, whatever the rules are. And it can be, it's the part that creates this like rigidity in you, where now you've lost or feel like you may have lost any creative flow. So if you're like bumping against creative flow, chances are there's a part that's like making sure that that you get it right, that you don't mess it up, don't hurt anybody along the way. So a little people pleaser in there, just a little people pleaser in there. They want to make sure that you get it right and that you follow all those rules that promise you, illusion, but give you the idea that if I do this and I do this, I will have this. And then once I have this, I can be this, right? So it's this like very vigilant part that's making sure that you follow the rules. If you're like working online, if you're a visionary and your work is online, you can totally fall victim to this where you feel like you have to follow a bunch of rules in order to have a certain outcome or an ROI, right? And most of it is not true at all. So you can have that constellation. You can have a part that is protecting you and monitoring your language, the words you use, how you say it. Make sure that you don't hurt anybody along the way. Make sure that you don't displease anybody. And so sometimes this will come out as what's called fawning. In other words, it's like we've got fight, flight, or freeze, and then there's also fawning. And fawning is I will match my energy or emotional beingness to you. So for example, this is one interpretation of it. There's lots of different ways to describe fawning. But for example, you've got a friend who's like super down. They've had such a hard time. Well, you're not going to go in there guns a-blazing and like celebrate your big win right in front of them. Because there's a part of you that doesn't want to be rude, needs you to stay humble, don't be too braggy, insert whatever, right? And that's fine. But here's what happens when we do this over and over again, is that we betray our own truth. It's a form of self-betrayal. It's a form of self-betrayal. And so in all of this protective mechanism, all of this protection and all the ways we stay hooked into the ways we think we have to protect ourselves, at the very bottom of that, there are different levels of self-betrayal. And they can be really intense. And there's a part of us that knows that. We're not being honest. We're putting ourselves, not even second or third. We're betraying our own truth. We're betraying our own greatness. We're betraying our own voice, our own heart. And that can be really painful. So unhooking yourself frees you from the almost unconscious self-betrayal that we do. Okay. I think that's it. Let me just make sure I haven't. Tell me what resonates. Please tell me something that resonates. I would love that. There's a part of me that's like, is this Leanna speak? Does it make sense? I want to be practical, right? But then so much of this is such a felt experience. It's so energetic. It's so energetic. It's so personal, right? It's so personal. It's so very personal. Okay. Ooh, yes. I can't believe I didn't say this one. Speaking of betrayal, one of the sort of protective mechanisms or the ways we stay protected are like why we're not unhooking ourselves, why we're not freeing ourselves, why we're staying looped in our patterns, right? Is a level of trust, is a level of if I unhook myself from this belief or I let this careful, cautious part of me go, I will be betrayed by the very people I trusted. I will be thrown under the bus. I will be made wrong. I will be tossed aside. I will be blamed. I will be blamed. It'll be my fault. And everybody's going to blame it on me. And I'm done with that. Right? So I don't want to feel that. So I'm not going to let that part of me that is very discerning, that takes a long time to trust people, that doesn't just take them at their word. Who would do that? Why would you do that? I'm not going to unhook myself from that because that part of me is making sure that I don't get blamed or ashamed or made wrong because I don't want to do that. Hi, Stephanie. Yes, exactly. I haven't had moments to catch the wise. Well, I'm very glad you caught on to this point. Yes. Yeah, and so these are very valid concerns. Remember I talked about, it's like, you don't just have a fear, like you don't just like, oh, I'm just afraid. It's like there are multiple aspects and elements and nuances to being afraid. Fear is not just like this monolithic thing, like I got to get fear out of my system. Oh no, girl. I wish it was like, oh, I'm holding a glass. I just need to stop holding it. Great, done. I just put it down. Like it doesn't work like that, and I wish it did, but it doesn't. Although you can do it very quickly if you're willing to just tell the truth. I don't want to release my protection of being discerning or not trusting people. I'm not willing to trust people. Because when I do, I get hurt, and I don't want to feel that. And then feel the actual sensation or the feeling of that hurt and let it move. Just get honest. Here's what it is. This is what it feels like. Okay. So that's what I want to say. The unhooking yourself is really releasing the protective mechanisms that you think you need, and in some cases you do need, in order to stay safe, to have a sense of belonging, to be loved, to be accepted, because we don't want to be alone. We don't want to be alone. And yet, funny enough, and here's a protective mechanism, when we most need people and support, some of us have parts that will make sure we don't reach for that we don't get what we need, and they will isolate us for multiple reasons. I don't want to put this on anybody. I don't think they can handle it. I don't want to bum them out. I think they're too busy for me. And again, there's that self-betrayal kicking out. I know this because I do this. Because I'm human. And so in the past, that part would flood me, and it would like kind of take over and make me make decisions like, oh, I don't want to reach out to so-and-so because I don't want to bum them out. At this point now, I'm aware that that part's coming in, and it thinks that it needs to protect me because it believes that I'm, 16 and like listening to Tori Amos crying in my bedroom. Like, I don't know, right? Like, that's the thing, is these parts are working as though we're at a certain age that most of us are not. It's like, actually, I'm not 16 anymore. Like I'm in my 40s. I'm not that same person, right? That's not who I am, right? And so I can see that, there's that part that thinks, oh, no, you shouldn't reach out to so-and-so. And I can listen to it, and I can say, I get it. You know what? If you have a concern, reach out again, but I am going to make that call. Give me a little bit of space. Let me do my thing, and you can see how safe it is. Yeah. Yeah. Any questions before and they can be anything, like, honestly, ask the how do I questions. The main piece I want you to understand is that get curious what your constellation is of protection. Notice when you're protecting. Notice when you're betraying your truth. Notice when you're lying. Lying is like really a heavy word here, but like notice when you're holding back. The process of unhooking yourself is freeing yourself. And part of freeing yourself is healing the protective parts of you that think they have to protect you, but healing those so that they can relax. And guess what? You have way more space. You have more space to think. You have more space to do. You have more space to be in your creative flow. You have more space to tap into intuition. Okay? All right. I love you guys. That's it. That's all. And I will see you next week.